Blood shouldn't stain a fence post, not out here, where the earth stirs awake gently and slow, and a fellow can pass half his days just trying to leave behind the life that shattered him. But that dawn, Elias Grant spotted a smear of deep crimson hardening beneath the climbing sun, and it halted him dead in the midst of his morning ride. He pulled up his mount and gazed. The landscape around him hung hushed, save for the breeze whispering over the scrub brush and the faint creak of his saddle hide. Elias was 52, etched by decades of relentless heat and deeper quiet. 12 years scraping by solo on this scrap of soil had shaped him into someone who favored his habits plain and his solitude absolute. And yet there he stood, eyeing a stain that had no right to exist. He eased down from his horse, boots hitting parched ground with a muted thump. The trail of blood snaked toward the distant edge of his pasture, that stretch no one ever traversed unless they were wandering blind or driven to the brink. Elias tracked it, shotgun cradled in his grip, every footfall stirring faint puffs of powder-fine dirt. Then he found her. A young lady sprawled twisted near the barrier, partly veiled by the high weeds. Her gown was ripped, her cheeks smeared with soil, and her breaths came in ragged, halting gasps, as if she'd fled farther than her body could endure. One palm pressed against her flank, where crimson had seeped into the cloth. The other pawed feebly at the dirt, like even in those last flickers, she was straining to drag herself onward. Elias drew near with caution, deliberate, the sort of care a person takes nearing a hurt creature that might lash out from sheer terror. Her lids quivered. When they lifted, he met emerald eyes fogged with agony and grit, eyes that fixed on him with the keen wariness of one who'd been pursued. He dropped to one knee beside her. His form cast a shade over her features, and she recoiled as if the gloom frightened her more than the glare of day ever might. When she attempted words, her initial exhale fractured. The next bore a murmur he scarcely caught. "Please don't drag me back." Elias sensed those words strike somewhere he figured had fossilized ages ago. He'd encountered dread plenty. He'd heard deceptions, pleas, and every rationale a soul could conjure. But this tone held no falsehood. It begged. It was fractured. He scanned the vast expanse, peering at the far-off swells. This sort of terror never arrives unaccompanied. It trails pursuers, fellows who'd hound a spoor till it petered out. One way or t'other, Elias glanced down at her once more, at the quiver in her digits, the grime clinging to the damp on her flesh, the raw resolve that must have demanded to stumble onto his ground at all. He knew zilch about her, but he didn't have to. Certain perils announce themselves. Some you sense in your bones, and others turn up disguised as an unfamiliar figure slumped on your threshold. The puzzle boiled down to this: what push could propel a young woman so deep into the untamed, daubing blood on a post that known no strife in over 10 years? Elias Grant scooped the young woman into his embrace, mindful not to jostle the gash at her hip. She weighed less than he'd guessed, the sort of frail lightness born from endless leagues covered on scant rations and endless dread. Her exhalations grazed faintly against his collar as he bore her toward the shack that had been his soul steadfast for 12 weary turns. Within, he settled her tenderly on the slim pallet by the pane. The hut carried scents of aged timber, stale pipe leaf, and a whisper of brew that had lingered on the burner since dawn. It was the aroma of a peaceful life, one now ripping asunder in manners he'd never foreseen. Elias hauled a bowl of water, rent the length from a fresh rag, and uncapped a wee flask of spirits saved for chill evenings and faded recollections. He rinsed the muck from her injury, noting how her chin clenched against the sting. She made no yelp. That spoke volumes on its own. When her eyes cleared at last, it shone brighter than prior, though edged with weariness. For an instant, she merely observed him, weighing if he spelled threat or rescue. Elias pressed on wordlessly. Rushing chatter never mended a soul. After a spell, she murmured, tone fragile and scraped. "Thank you." Her knuckles gripped the coverlid like she craved an anchor in the flux. Elias dipped his head once. "You fled a good distance. Someone's on your tail." The question hung there, soft as silk dancing in a twilight ray. She paused, then gulped. "Yes, they won't quit. Not until they finish what they began." Elias eased onto the bench by the pallet. He'd witnessed this brand of fright in days gone, long back when armed roughnecks bowed only to their own avarice. He'd interred too many secrets to misread this expression for aught else. What did they commence? His timber held even, yet laced with the resolve of one who sought candor and would settle for naught else. The woman shut her lids briefly, as if mustering resolve. Then she shared. "I'm Mira Hale. My kin held a modest stake by Copper Ridge. We uncovered a lode of mineral, purer than any we dreamed." Gossip flew swift, too swift. Elias felt his mandible firm as she continued. "A gent called Vance Harlan craved it. He's overseer at the dig site. He dispatched his rough crew one eve. They claimed they just sought parley, but types like that don't show for words." Her timber splintered, and she tugged the coverlet nearer. "They seized our holdings. They stripped us bare. I slipped away only 'cause I bolted while they figured me gone. They aimed to seal it so no one learned their deeds." Elias remained rooted, allowing her account to seep into the hut's fissures. Copper Ridge, a pilfered stake.
Thugs paid to erase it. It's slotted too tidy, too flawless, the manner foul fates unfold when avarice calls the tune. Past the casement, the vista sprawled still and broad, but Elias knew peace's deceit. He stood gradual, limbs aching from labor's stern and recollection's sterner, and ambled to the portal. He nudged it ajar to survey the meadow. Naught stirred bar the gust, swaying the lofty fronds. Yet disquiet clung. Turning, he caught Mira eyeing him, concern keen in her stare. "Reckon they've picked up my path?" Elias replied with the starkness the wilds exact. "If they hunger for you this fierce, they'll chase the breeze itself." He traversed the space, shoved the worn mat aside, and hoisted the concealed hatch below. The fittings whined from neglect, griping like wearied joints. He gestured to the gloom beneath. "You'll be secure there till I gauge what's inbound." Mira wavered, her digits knotting the coverlet. Her tone quavered. "If they arrive, you can't stand against 'em solo." Elias met her squarely. "I've stood alone in age, plenty to grasp my limits." For a heartbeat she held fast. Then she drew a measured inhale, summoned her grit, and descended the rungs. Elias sealed the hatch, smoothed the mat flush, then paused, ear-cock. The shack sighed about him, timbers murmuring their eternal murmur, but one noise jarred. Hoof-falls, soft initial, remote, rhythmic. Elias edged to the pane and squinted at the yonder crest. 4 horsemen crested a gentle hump, their outlines advanced with intent. Thugs retained to trail and conclude a task. Thugs craving no observers. The quartet eased by the barrier, scanning the soil as their steeds flicked heads. One alighted and hunkered, probing the loam. Elias knew his quarry precise. Prints, gore, any mark of an injured soul dodging demise. The gent rose and jabbed toward the shack. From afar, Elias sensed the pivot in the ether, that instant when menace spies its mark. He strode onto the veranda, scattergun slack yet primed. The planks beneath his soles moaned caution. The foremost called, timber tart as aged rye. We're after a pilferer, a deceiver, an intruder. She bolted this way. We only need pose a query or two. Elias rejoined sans flinch. This spread sees no callers. You'll turn up empty. The quartet Schwab nods, mounts restless neath the blaze. Strain slithered betwixt 'em like a serpent gliding brush. Elias bore the instant's burden on his frame, for all hinged on the morrow, and the quartet had resolved to scour his turf ere departing. The horsemen edged nearer, beasts huffing veils of earth as they reined mere strides from Elias's stoop. The vanguard perched erect astride, palms idle by his sidearm, gaze honed with the assurance of one who'd maimed a plenty sans reckoning. Elias sensed his jaw set, yet held his poise loose. The scattergun rested featherlight in his hold. The gent hailed anew, "We'll comb your outhouse and lean-to. Won't claim but a tick." Elias offered a languid incline. "A boundless realm grants choices free, but ponder well ere treading unbedoned ground." The quartet traded glances. The breed shared before strife hones keen. One clucked and urged his mount ahead. A second trailed, veering barnward. The third dropped and sifted the earth by the pail. Elias tracked him keen. Trailing was craft, and that soul wrought like a master. The vanguard held post, boring into Elias as if to flay each hidden with mere scrutiny. When he leered, "Solitary days here." "I'd miss a passer-by," Elias countered with the poise of one who'd long picked quiet over kin. "I mark what warrants marking." The soul-sifting soil abruptly lifted palm. Elias felt the ether turn. The gent crouched anew, grazed the clay with digits, then aimed it at the portal. "New prints, dainty, faint. Not your tread. Company graced you this morn." The vanguard beamed, bearing a grin sprouted from foul aims. "Looks like guests, eh?"
Elias stirred not. His pulse held firm, schooled so in epochs when endurance ruled. Within the shack, he pictured Mira breathless in the underfloor murk. He wished the hatch firm, he wished her dread mute. The vanguard vaulted down and advanced veranda-ward. His soles ground the crisp blades underfoot. Each pace measured, like he craved Elias hear every span. At the riser's base he perched palms soft on his iron. Souls who perch so seldom pause long. Elias nudged his scattergun a fraction, scant to spark fray, but ample to etch the furrow in the dust. The gent canted skull and murmured low, "We're bound indoors." Ere Elias could retort, a crisp snap rang from the shack astern. A plank, sole one, just so. The gent's eyes slitted. He'd caught it too. In that flash, the tranquil morn warped to ravenous peril, and Elias Grant grasped the inaugural volley loomed nigh. The plank's echo scarce faded when the vanguard clawed for his iron. Elias stirred swifter, not the haste of youth, but the haste of seasoned guile. His scattergun boomed once, hurling the gent rearward into the powder where he stirred no more. The rest sprang alert. Shots splintered the serene expanse, rending the dawn asunder. Elias lunged hind the balustrade as slugs ripped timber and flung shards. He cycled his piece, loosed anew, then wheeled ere the next gouged the upright by his crown. From the shack's heart, a stifled keen betold myriad seized it all. He beseeched she hunkered, her hurt barred prolonged strife. This clash fell to him. Twin riders sheltered hind the cistern. One clung barn flank, loosing clipped salvos. Elias tallied their blasts, their stance, the narrowing gulf twixt breath and void. He'd spurned this clash, he'd spurned all flux, but flux had dawned, and he wasn't the sort to yield his turf meek. With the riders fixed porchward, Elias slunk flank and dashed barn-bound. His limbs seared, gusts rasped, but he forged on. In the byre he spied a bin of bygone gear, remnants from a dig he'd toiled ere fate veered him else. He spied his need, a lone charge of digger's powder, sheathed in frayed wrap. Cord intact, he'd hoarded its seasons, vowing to pitch it some day. He hadn't. He kindled the cord with unsteady digits, breathed the hushed prayer, and bulled the charge over the clay toward the cistern where Duo lurked. It tumbled once, twice, then a fierce blast rent the breeze. Loam and haze erupted as the cistern sundered. When haze thinned, one rider sprawled still. Another crawled off, lamed and flight-bound. The final by the barn flank gaped stunned, then cast his piece, vaunted mount, and spurred fierce for the heights.
Hush draped the stead gradual, a hush laden heavy. Elias paced back cabinward, peace yet warm and grasp. Mira thrust the portal wide, ashen and shaking, yet breathing. She eyed the fallen, then him, her timber sundered. Is it over? Elias inclined. For the nonce, but candor finds its gleam. They'll square for Silver Ridge come first glow. Elias tugged on his footwear and snared his lid. Mira beheld from the pallet, fret renewed in her gaze. Where bound? To the closest hemlet. Someone must voice your kin. Her knuckles clenched the coverlet's rim, her tone fractured. Please, don't. If they learn I'm drawing breath, they'll hound us both. Elias held her regard, the onus of his pick ponderous yet firm. They're inbound already. The variance lies in shadows or forthright. The code awaits. Elias girt his mount and spurred to the proximate burg, truth a yoke on shoulders, Mira's murmur in thoughts. Turns on, envoys from the shire came. Mira shared her yarn. They hearkened. This round, the code hearkened, and the soil sighed afresh. Elias mended his pail of evenings whilst Mira perched veranda, balm of sun on cheek. The hush felt altered now, not void, not forlorn, merely true. He'd squandered 12 turns evading the world, but one wayfarer felled at his pail recalled a vital. A soul's not forged to haul history as fetter. At times he must snap it. At times he must arise anew. At times the sternest trail wends homeward. So, a muscling for you. When fate hauls one to your sill, craving your mettle, will you recede or advance? If this yarn lingered a whit, lend it favor. It aids more than you deem. And should you crave further treks across the old frontier, pray join in journey with the morrow's weave.